Good morning, everyone. On Sunday mornings, I have been talking on this text for several years. Today, I'd like to talk on one paragraph on page 104. Second paragraph of page 104. Around the middle of the page. Let me read this paragraph. Yet, to vomit up this apple is no easy matter, even if we understand that there is no reason to stick the label of self onto an aggregation of various coincidental factors and to get attached to this label. And if, moreover, we understand that this attachment to ego is the source of various evils, delusions, and sufferings, and therefore ought to be vomited up. Even if we understand all this, we still cannot vomit up the apple. For our ego attachment does not occur merely on the sure face of consciousness. We are eating that apple prior to our conscious awareness, that is, in the depth of our subconscious. Indeed, it may well be that in our very desire to throw up the apple, throw up the apple, the poison of the apple is at work. At this point, human intellect serves no purpose at all, for it is precisely using our head that is being called into question. So he continues to talk about this apple. Apple came from the cartoon of Adam and Eve. Ate apple. There is a cartoon by a Japanese cartoonist. It said, Adam is trying to vomit the apple he ate sometime in the past. And Eva was asking, have you not yet vomit the apple yet? And Okumura Roshi really liked this cartoon. And he said, in the previous paragraph, he said, we are eating the apple again and again. It's not in the mythology. We are eating the apple each moment, or almost each moment. So this is not someone in the past, but we are eating this apple. And this apple, according to Okumura Roshi, is ego attachment. Ego attachment means separation. In the case of Christianity, separation between we human beings and God. When they ate the apple, they felt they are separate from other beings, especially God. So when God came and called Adam's name, they hide themselves. But in the case of Buddhism, this apple is a separation from, separate ourselves from the interconnectedness. And even though we are existing as a part of this network of interdependent origination, so there's no way we can separate ourselves from the other beings. We can exist only within the relation with others, and yet in our mind we make a separation and we think we are outside of this network and we are observer. we observe this and make evaluation. And we say, I like this or I hate that. This separation and interaction is a basic delusion in the case of Buddhism. So, in Christianity, religion means to be connected or tied with God again. That is what religion means. But in Buddhism, we have an expression ki myo. Ki myo is a translation of nam, Namu Amida Butsu, or Nam means take refuge. And one of the Chinese translation of Nam is Kimyo. And Ki literally means return. And Myo means life. So return to the life. Return to the reality of life, that is interconnectedness with all beings. That is what our practice means, to return to the basic reality in which we are living together with all beings. In this paragraph, Okumura Roshi said, it's really difficult to vomit that up, to be free from this separation and ego attachment. He continued, even if we understand that there is no reason to stick the label of self onto an aggregation of various coincidental factors and to get attached to this label. This label means I. As Buddha taught, our life, or this body and mind, is only an aggregation or collection of 5 skandhas. That is form, sensation, perception, formation, and consciousness. Form is matter or material, and other 4 are the function of our mind. So 5 aggregate or 5 skandhas means our body, in our case, in human life, body and mind. And somehow these 5 skandhas work together as like a machine. Somehow 5 skandhas create this concept of I, or ego. And problem is somehow, I is a production of 5 skandhas. Somehow 5 skandhas think this I is the owner and operator of 5 skandhas. That is a problem. So this is what is called label, according to Okumura Roshi, label. So there are only 5 things are there, but to put a label and call this I, or in my case, shohaku. So instead of my, this my body or my mind or my perception or my consciousness, I say shohaku. Shohaku think this or that. Shohaku likes this and that. That is the label. And 5 skandhas attach themselves to this I as almost like a king or lord. And 5 skandhas think they are the workers or servant of this I. And what Buddha taught is there is no such thing called I. Only 5 skandhas are there. And these 5 skandhas depend because of this I. I becomes subject, and all other things become object. And subject has a sensation of object. So we receive the sensation or kind of a stimulation from the object. I see this is a black, and all other thing, all other function of my mind work together and say this is a black marker, and I make a concept what this is, and I make evaluation whether this is variable or not, or important or not. And in the consciousness, we make definition and evaluation, and I think I understand this. That is how this 5 function works between subject and object. Another way to analyze our life according to Buddha's teaching or Buddhism is 6 sense organs, like eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and mind. These 6 sense organs have 6 objects of sense organs. So this is subject and object. And the object of eye is color or shape. We call this form, and so on. And when I and the object of I encounter, I consciousness arises until the body. These are sensation, and all sensation and become perception, and we make judgment with formation, and it becomes a consciousness. And once it becomes consciousness, the object of mind. In Chinese character, that is Ho or Dharma, as the object of our mind. These become the object of our mind. So mind and object of mind create the mind consciousness. That is what we usually thinking. So those production of these encountering become the concept and evaluation. And our mind see these object of mind. And in old early Buddhist teachings, this object of mind as an object of our mind is called nama rupa. Rupa means, these objects are rupa, but we don't see the object as they are. But this nama means name. So nama rupa is a combination of name and material. So as a material, this is a plastic and some ink is in there. But I call this a black marker. So this is as an object of my mind. This is a combination of material and the name, black marker. That is what I think this is. and this is the object of my mind. But this is not really a black marker. This is a black marker only when I use this to write something, or until this became the black marker when it was manufactured in certain factory. This was not a black marker. This became black marker, or called black marker, when it became a commercial goods. And because I can write, or I need to use this as to write something on this whiteboard, I accept the name and this material and think this is a black marker. And in my consciousness, because I need this to write something, this has some value and meaning. That is how I see this object. But this is not a black marker forever. When the ink dried up, I changed the name of this object as a trash and put it in the trash can. And this becomes something else after that. So this thing itself, or as it is no name. And this is impermanent. To be a black marker is only certain period of time, and only in relation between this person as a user and this thing. When the condition of this thing changed, the name of this thing changed. So there's nothing permanent, nothing independent from the process of this thing coming and going, and within the relation between this person and this thing. But somehow when we make this concept, I think this this black marker is coming and going, and this cease to be sometime in the future. But the idea or concept of black marker doesn't change. Black marker is always black marker. And therefore, I am always I. Shohaku is always shohaku, which doesn't change. This is how, within our mind, that means within our 5 skandhas, we reify, all those impermanent things as they are really there, as a permanent, independent entity. That is what Buddha taught. And when we study Buddhism, we understand that. So this is a fabrication. And the reality is only the collection of 5 aggregates. Therefore, there's no reason we have to attach, the 5 skandhas have to attach this I. That is what we may understand when we study Buddhist teaching. That is why Fat Dogen is, not Dogen, but Okumura Roshi is saying here. So even if we understand, this teaching is correct, and if moreover we understand that this attachment to ego, to I, is the source of various evils, delusions, and sufferings. So attachment to I makes our life into suffering. Because I kind of encounter with things based on this ego attachment, and we make discrimination whether this is important to me, helpful to me, valuable to me, or I like this, or I don't like that, or this is valueless or meaningless. So depending upon not depending upon, but to protect and make this I more important and powerful, stronger than others, we make that separation, discrimination, and we try to gain those things that makes this I more important and powerful or stronger. And we try to escape or stay away from those things that we don't like or we think meaningless, or we have a negative sensation. Then we try to stay away or even try to escape from them. So because of this ego attachment, we separate this world or this interconnectedness into two parts. One is positive, another is negative. And we want to be this side, and we want to escape from that side. And our life become learning or chasing after something important or we like, or escaping from something we don't want. That is, this learning makes our life into samsara. We are always chasing after something or escaping from something. And sometimes we feel we are successful, so only things I like is around me, and everything I don't like is outside of my territory. Then we feel our life is successful or okay, and we feel like we are in the heavenly realm. But that is not so often caused or happens. Otherwise, more often we feel like we are hungry ghost. We want to get more, and yet the more we get, we have our desire become larger, and we want to get more and more. And sometimes we feel we are like in the hell. Nothing positive happened to me. And this transmigration or changing is not only in from previous life to this lifetime, or to this lifetime to the next lifetime. That is traditional Buddhist teaching. But this transmigration within 6 or more realms is moment by moment within this lifetime. So this ego consciousness or clinging to ego makes our life samsara and transmigration and suffering. That is what we learn from Buddhist teaching, and we understand, and we agree with it. Then we become a Buddhist or Buddha's student and try to study more and practice. That is what we do, but Okumura said still that is thinking. So even if we understand all what Buddha taught like this, so we should become free from I. I understand, I agree, and I try, but it doesn't work so well. That is what Okumura Roshi is saying. Because, all those teachings we study from Buddhist text or from some teachers, it's still Namarupa. We are thinking in this level. So this is still thinking. And when we understand Buddhist teaching on this level, to live in this way that creates samsara is not good. So liberation from this way of life is better or more desirable. Therefore, I want to escape from this and go and return to or arrive to this way, that is nirvana. So we don't like samsara, living in like a samsara, and we want to reach nirvana. That is how I think that is a motivation we start to study and practice Buddhism, I think, most of the cases, at least in my case. So, but when we understand and study and practice on this level, we are still thinking, and even Buddha's teaching is Namarupa. And of course, that is a kind of a important and necessary step, but that is not enough. So Okumura said, even if we understand this, all this, we still cannot vomit up the apple, because all these are taking place in our mind, that is caused by apple, by eating apple. Eating apple is having a wisdom or intellect to make separation between good and bad. So by understanding this and think what Buddha taught is correct, doesn't make change, because we are still in the realm of thinking. And Okumura Roshi continued, for our ego attachment does not occur merely on the sure face of consciousness. Sure face of consciousness is on this level, mind and object of mind. We are eating that apple prior to our conscious awareness. That means our apple is much deeper than this. So this apple is not something we really ate. That means something coming from outside. But this apple is always here. And whenever we eat something, this something is influenced or worked with this apple. And everything become apple. And there's no way to vomit. Is there any way? That is what Okumura Roshi is talking. So this is in the depths of our subconsciousness. In the history of Buddhist teaching, Buddhists discover subconsciousness much earlier than Europeans. This is done by the masters in Yogacara school. Yogacara school is one of the two major schools in Mahayana Buddhism in India. One is Madhyamika, schools founded by Nagarjuna, and the main teaching is emptiness. And this one, Yogacara, is sometimes considered as a Buddhist psychology. And they are called Yogacara because they practice yoga. Yoga means meditation. And they found, this is not only what is happening in our mind, but they discovered there are two more layers in our consciousness. So first 6 and the 7th is called a manas. Manas vijnana. Vijnana means consciousness. And sometimes this manas consciousness is translated into English as ego consciousness. And the 8th is called araya. Araya consciousness. And this araya literally means a storage or storehouse. And this means, this teaching, this structure is only this moment, and subject and object. But when we think of time, we need to have these two. I think that is one of the reasons that they thought there are two layers of consciousness. Below, underneath our commodity, our thinking mind, that is separate between subject and object, and we think about object. And according to Yogacara, all of our activities, actions, or karma is stored in this storage called alaya. Everything, not only things we remember, and not only things we experienced after our birth, but even the kind of a memory from before our birth. If we think in the modern science, that can be like a DNA, is a kind of a memory or information from the past lives before we are born. That is a large part of our life, our consciousness, and we cannot change by thinking. Whether we think we like it or not like it, we cannot change. It's really difficult to change by thinking. Anyway, so all our experiences is stored in alaya consciousness. And this seventh consciousness cling or grasp this storage and the things stored in this storage as a seed. They call these these past experiences are stored as seed in the treasury called alaya. And this manas grasp these seeds as me or I, and attach to it. And also another function of this manas or ego consciousness is to control first 6 consciousnesses. So because of the function of this ego consciousness, we think this is me. This is how I put the label of collection of 5 skandhas and all the information from the past as me. And we identify, these seeds are me. And depending upon how we are, where we are born, and how we are raised, and what kind of education we received, the seeds we have in the storage called alaya is different. So because these 6 consciousness are controlled by this ego consciousness, even when we see one and the same thing, we think differently, depending upon what kind of seeds are stored in our consciousness. So even when we think on this level, subject and object, and in this case, object is Buddhist teaching, and subject I think this is all correct. So we should not cling to this I. So we should stop such way of life, because it makes our life into samsara and makes us suffering. But the 7th ego consciousness is much deeper than this. So even when I think so, the egocentricity or ego attachment is much deeper than this person's thinking. Therefore, next Okumura Roshi says, indeed, it may well be that in our very desire to throw up the apple, the poison of the apple is at work. That means even when I think, ego attachment is a cause of suffering or a cause of problem, we have to be free from ego attachment. That is a understanding or thinking and motivation to study and practice, Buddhist teaching or Buddha Dharma. But this desire or motivation that this is a healthier way of life, so I have to stop living within samsara and become free from ego attachment, and to practice, study and practice Buddhist teaching. Within this, we call this as a Buddhist term, body-mind, or bodhicitta, or awakening mind. That is a motivation or aspiration to study Buddhism or practice Buddha Dharma. Still, this motivation is influenced by ego consciousness, because this is suffering, this is painful, full of sadness. I don't like this, so I want to find a better way of life. This came from the apple. Still, the ego attachment. This is better than ego attachment. So, on this level, if we study in this kind of teaching, somehow our mind separated into two parts. That means I don't like this. Therefore, I want to transform our life. And yet, that motivation itself is influenced from much deeper, influenced by ego consciousness, and feel because this is better to me. That is the problem. Probably this is the final problem we have to face. In the beginning, when we study and understanding what Buddha taught, and we start to practice, in the beginning we feel better. I discovered the alternative way of life. So we feel, this is the way, and I like this. And for a while we feel happy. We even feel I was saved. But sooner or later we find that is itself the function of ego attachment. That means I'm okay. I want to feel I'm okay. This is really deep and subtle. So in the beginning, when we are thinking and practice based on thinking, we don't find that is a problem. We simply feel better, and my life become healthier. But when we continue to practice for many years, in my case, after about 10 years, I found the function of ego attachment, even in my practice, is still working. And even that ego attachment is the motivation of my practice. That was really difficult time to me, because I couldn't stop practicing. But but I couldn't continue to practice in the same way because my motivation to practice is the problem. So this is a kind of, at least in my experience, this experience was like facing the dead end. I couldn't leave, and I couldn't go forward. I have to stop and facing this, wall, and I couldn't do anything. And this condition lasted for a while. And in my experience, the way I could become free from this dead end is when I become really tired of this kind of facing the dead end. I almost gave up everything. I couldn't, return to the other way of life, and yet I couldn't go forward. So I have to stay and struggle. And this condition lasts, I think, several months. And finally, I become tired of this struggle. So one time I just give up. And that was a time I lived by myself in a small apartment in Osaka after I went back from Massachusetts. And because I was so tired and I had no energy to continue to struggle anymore, then one evening, I was sitting by myself, and I even forget about the struggle. Then somehow, there is an expression in Zen, the bottom of lacquered barrel broken. That means until that moment, I try to control. I want to control my life and become a good student of my teacher or Buddha's disciple. So I try to, how can I say, try to not gain or attain or achieve something, but still in a much deeper than my thinking, I still try to control my life, and I wanted to feel okay. But I found that there's no way to say such a thing. So I gave it up. When I gave it up, somehow I find, this is all empty. That means I became free from even Buddha's teaching. I don't care. And just sit. This found me a very much deeper kind of a peacefulness. I don't need to struggle, and there's no such dead end from the beginning. That dead end is delusion. From the very beginning, until then, even though I studied Dogen's teaching, but still I think this is caused by my ego clinging, and even my motivation to practice is ego clinging. But at that moment, I first understood what Dogen said. When we think in this way, everything we do is influenced by ego attachment or ignorance. Somehow, wind of ignorance blows, then we live in this way, and even try to be free from this way of life is within this way. But when I gave it up, then we find, as Dogen said, this wind is not the wind of ignorance, but this wind is wind of Buddha Dharma, as Dogen said in Genjo Koan. And I felt first I understood what Saokiroshi said. I thought I understood Saokiroshi saying Zazen is good for nothing. Because I like that saying, I started to practice, Zazen when I was 17 or 19 years old. So I thought I understood what he meant. Zazen is good for nothing. So I could not, and I should not expect any good result from Zazen. And I even for 10 years, more than 10 years, I devoted my life to practice this good for nothing Zazen. But when I went back to Japan from Massachusetts, I found that my Zazen in the past 10 years was not really good for nothing. But because of this practice of good for nothing Zazen, I feel I'm okay. Or I feel my life is better than other people's life who are working, hard in a busy, noisy, materialistic society. So I was supported by this good for nothing Zazen. And this good for nothing Zazen can be practiced because my body was young and strong. At that time, my body was half broken, so I couldn't practice in the way I practiced in my 20s. That's why I had, this struggle. If Zazen is good for nothing, why it can be a problem when I couldn't do it. But still, I was in trouble, and I felt like my life was a failure. My life was really good for nothing. And I wonder why I felt in such a way if Zazen is really good for nothing. And what I found is, in this level, I practice without expecting any good reward. But still, by practicing this good for nothing Zazen, I feel I'm good. This is such a strange thing, this how this manas or ego consciousness works. Sometimes we feel, because we have nothing, we are rich. That because we are free from greediness. But by thinking in that way, we are still greedy. So, Okumura Roshi wrote this book when I was a university student. So I have been practicing based on his teaching in this book for about 45 years. And so I studied this book many times. And when I translate this book with Tom Wright, we slowly went through, word by word. And last several years, I have been talking on this book, paragraph by paragraph. But in each paragraph, when I think in detail and try to understand using entire knowledge I have and entire experience I had in the past, each paragraph can, how can I say, not can, but is really connected with entire teaching of Buddhism. So each time I read each and every paragraph or even sentence, I found something new, and I tried to understand through my experience. Then, when I read this sentence, only just thinking, there's nothing difficult. But when I think of my, how can I say, my traveling or journey of last 45 years, each sentence or each paragraph what he is saying has something to do with what I experienced. So I really, appreciate his teaching. So it's already 11. Finally, in this paragraph, he said, at this point, human intellect serves no purpose at all. That means thinking and understanding in this level of mind and mind consciousness doesn't work. Because the fact that we live and work in this way is the problem. Then after that, from the next paragraph, or in the next paragraph, he talks about the significance or meaning of our Zazen practice. In our Zazen practice, we let go of thought, means let go of this entire system, how our body and mind works. So I continue from here, I think in September. This is the last Sunday of July, and in August we don't have Dharma talk on Sundays. We only have 2 periods of Zazen from 9 to 11. And second half of August I'll be out of town. And second half of September I will be out of town. So probably I continue this from October. Okay, anyway, thank you for listening. Any question or comments? Okay.
Well, after the talk, to ask a question is just another form of ego attachment, I'm afraid, but I still have questions. At the Adya level, is there any perception whatsoever? And if there is, then that perception seems to me to be almost a hard wiring for non-perception. And if that's the case, then the aggregates are forming the I that the Adya level perceives, which seems to me something very close to Atman. And therefore is almost a hardwired perception of ego, but the ego ultimately wouldn't be the attachment to I, it would be the attachment itself. Is that halfway accurate?
You mean 5 aggregate attached to 5 aggregate themselves?
There has to be conditions arising, and that seems to me to have to be at the Adya level. That's the condition arising that causes the perception of the aggregates. The aggregates cause the perception of I. I causes the perception of attachment. Attachment samsara. And so it's not, it seems to me it's not the Alya I that, if some level of that exists before birth, then that encoding is almost deterministic for forcing us into a pattern of behavior. And that pattern of behavior is the I that causes the samsara. I'm sorry, I'm just trying to put it all together, and it was such a complex talk. It's
Yes.
going to take me until you start talking again to be able to sort it. But it seems to me that I guess my basic question is, at the Alya level, is there any kind of perception?
In which level you said?
Alaya. I'm not any good at pronouncing.
Alaya?
Yeah, number 8. At number 8, is there any level of perception? And or does the way it works produce some kind of perception?
I think these two are below or deeper than subject and object.
Yes.
So there's no perception. It's one.
If there's no perception, how does perception arise? If the aggregates themselves can't produce perception.
Sometimes, according to Buddhism, the 5 skandhas create perception by thinking. Those objective things are their object. The 5 aggregates think this is subject, and both are illusion, according to Madhyamika, or the teaching of emptiness. These are both empty.
I see that. I just don't see how it starts.
I don't know. I don't know how it starts.
There has to be conditions arising that has to come before or as a result of the standards coming together, in which case they create something greater than themselves, which seems to contradict the underlying teachings of Buddhism and perception of non-perception.
I'm sorry, but I have no answer.
Thank you.
Thank you for your question. You raised your hand.
When you were talking about leaving Massachusetts and going back to Japan, and how you struggled, and there was a point where you gave up. That reminded me of the chapter in Living by Vow, which I was reading recently, the chapter about the Okesa. And there's a place in there where you talk about wearing the Okesa, that it's a symbol of emptiness. And you say, we wear the Okesa and we just open our hands. And that phrase, open our hands, is repeated a few times during the couple of paragraphs where you're talking about that. And I wondered, as you were talking today about your experience of giving up, if those two things are similar. Your experience of giving up and this idea that sitting zazen, we would open our hands. Does that make sense?
I think so. So I don't think my practice for 10 years before I had such a struggle was not meaningless. But that is a kind of necessary process to face that deeper problem. Okay. think you.
Actually, you just answered my question.
Okay, please.
Even in grade school, I looked around the room and wondered about people's thoughts, their minds, how they're so different, where does all that come from? And back then, crazy people, people who just can't be understood. Now, as an adult, I've spent years, decades working with mentally ill. You talk about alaya, level of consciousness, and I guess I should have always known this, but you mentioned the DNA and past, who knows what has gone into making each one of us individuals different. I've spent a lot of time helping, trying to do something for individuals who seemingly will never change, have no chance of gaining bodhicitta, have no chance of showing insight, or very minimal. My house has just been sold and it's going to be turned into an adult daycare for individuals who have completely disabled. Some can't eat, talk, walk, have any normal bodily functions. How does the Buddhist society that you grew up in or currently is in Japan, how do you look upon these individuals? How do you treat them? What happens in your society that you come from, or would like to see fostered here, treat these type of individuals? Do you have any recollection of the mental illness system in Japan, or how they view these individuals?
I think it's really an important question, and
I struggle with it
and
all the
honest.
time because I spend so much time with these people, and it's like you look at the wall, but knocking your head against the wall, you're not going to get anywhere with these folks. But compassion, I feel for them.
Honestly speaking, in Japanese society, Buddhism didn't work in that way. Buddhism was practiced in a monastery, and Buddhist priests in the temple, in the society, do a kind of a service for the lay people, but they didn't really teach this kind of Buddhist teaching. There's very important and helpful teaching in this, but in the history of Buddhism, only small number of people studied, understand, and practice in this way within the monastic system. So I think your question, and many Buddhist in America now started to work in the society in many different ways as activists or case workers or therapists, and so this is this is a kind of to me I think we can say a new epoch of Buddhism. Buddhism has been only for Buddhist Buddhist monks and very honest lay people, but we didn't try until recently we didn't try how can this teaching of Buddhism can help not only people who are mentally ill but who have different kind of difficulties. How can this teaching could help? It's something very new thing, I think, and I'm glad I'm here instead of just living in a monastery, in Japanese monastery, and just for practice Zazen and teaching Buddhist what Buddha taught, but how this teaching of Buddhism can be helpful to the very basic and serious problem of many people in this society.
Sometimes seems like it's really messy out here, outside the monastery. It's not so,
In Japan too. And monastery become messy again also. That's a problem. Thank you. So I think we need to be creative, and we have to practice ourselves, and we need to try. How can not use, but how can this teaching be helpful to the problems people have? Okay. Please.
When you gave up, did you have a sense of giving up to something greater than yourself? Let me tell you where part of that question comes from.
Mm-hmm.
In the Christian tradition, Jesus says something to this effect. Thy will be done. And my mother tells a somewhat similar story of facing a wall. There was no other thing possible for her to do. And she felt her whole system offer all effort and a quality of surrender.
Mm-hmm.
But there was a difference in the sense that she's saying thy will. She's pointing to something else. I didn't hear that in your story, so I'd like to get some clarification.
Probably that might be the difference between Christianity and Buddhism. As I said in the very beginning of this talk, we return to this network of interdependence origination. Return to the original place.
Yes.
So we don't give up anything, or we don't offer ourselves to someone else, but we just become ourselves naturally. That might be a kind of a difference. Okay. Okay, thank you very much for listening.